You know, in the meantime, those dogs are probably starving. They're probably gonna die before they even get to them.
2010, in New York City, there was a fight going on to save affordable housing. With 8 million people living within 303 square miles, the population density drives rents sky high. To counter this and provide affordable housing, the city created rent-regulated apartments that exist outside market pressures. However, in 1997, a law passed in New York State simply named Vacancy Decontrol. It allows landlords to remove apartments from regulation, and afterwards they can charge any amount for rent. So far, 300,000 apartments have been lost in New York City and suburban counties to vacancy decontrol, and today, tenants struggle to save the slowly disappearing affordable housing.
Realistically speaking, coming from Queens. Realistically speaking,
it's the BIGTWINS in Queensbridge is where we rap for holding Tex Mac 9, 4 pounds of shotties. You don't want to get bodied, so fix your face. Before I air that ass out, go to court and beat the case. It's real like that. I have no feelings inside. Maybe cause my twin brother died in front of my eyes. And it hurts to this day like a pain in my chest. That's why I stay vexed in the hood sipping on Bex. Wishing I can get a check instead of robbing something all the time. It's about crime, but we gotta give it up before they put me behind bars with no parole. I love old gold too much, I gotta stay home. Plus the orgies, the shorties be blessing me all day. Even at a movie, they do what I say. We gonna start from the ground till we rise to the top. If not done, we gonna run up in these banks with the Glock.
Wow, I came here. I say it's gonna be like about 26 years. When we would go home, like, you know, our mother would call us and say, it's time to come home. This was it. This was home. This was, you know, we felt at peace here. We felt, you know, like when we walked in the door, the people of the building, it was like family, like one big family. That's from the water, man. All the water comes in.
Caesar Guzman's building didn't always look like this. In 2008, his landlord Ocelot abandoned his rent-regulated building, leaving it in total disrepair.
The whole floor is slanted. Like everything on that side of the building, it's like caving. I don't want to end up downstairs, but...
Ocelot owned 25 buildings in the Bronx, and each one shared the same fate. In 2008, Fannie Mae foreclosed on the over-leveraged buildings, leading to total abandonment.
People come in and buy buildings like this because they think they're going to make a fortune. But what they don't count on is that their rent's stabilized. They have guidelines. So they're not going to make the money that they think that they're going to make.
2 years prior, at the height of the housing boom, Ocelot took out an excessively large mortgage to buy the buildings.
Like, we're in the process of cleaning everything out. But
to afford the mortgage, they need to quickly raise the rents by vacancy decontrol.
They stole they were
Only possible if they take apartments out of regulation. Between 2006 and 2008, Ocelot rarely paid for maintenance. Housing activists call this use of decontrol predatory equity.
Well, I believe these were rent-stabilized apartments at one time. How the rent got so high, I don't know, but I know there was problems in the past. Yeah, the average apartment in here is running about $920 a month.
To save his home, though, Caesar took to the streets and protest.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Well, I'm here because we do not know who our management is. We had no hot water, no running water. We had to break in to the boiler in the basement so that we can get somebody in there so that the police can go in there and turn on our hot water.
when do we want it? Now! When do we want? When do we want it? Now!
The campaign to save affordable housing brings together tenants from every borough of the city.
There is a housing emergency in New York City, an unprecedented shift in landlord practices and behavior. This new breed of real estate speculators are buying up residential properties with the intent of sucking the lifeblood out of stable communities.
They also hope to save their standard of living.
It is the poor that nobody cares about. And let me tell you that the poor of this community are working. They are working poor. They are the working poor.
I need English and Russian if you could give them to me. Sponsor this bill to strengthen the rent laws because we need to save the rent laws where they're being phased out.
For 40 years, Michael McKee has advocated for tenants. He helps organize rallies and community outreach. After 1997, when the rent laws were weakened, he helped found Tenants PAC to elect pro-tenant candidates and end vacancy decontrol.
The way vacancy decontrol works, and its impact is much greater than most people realize. And the real estate lobby would have us believe it's a very minor part of the big picture, but it's a very big part of the big picture.
Here's what we're doing. You're knocking on a door. You're trying to engage people in conversation. You say hello.
Vacancy decontrol works by allowing landlords to remove apartments from regulation if the rent reaches $2,000.
Now that can happen one of two ways. It can be the tenant's in occupancy, the rent reaches $2,000, and the tenant moves out at some future point, in which case it's removed from regulation, or to price people out by doing improvements and raising the rent to the point where they can't afford it.
This is easier than it seems for landlords. Every time an apartment becomes vacant, the landlord could raise the rent 20%. Every renovation on the apartment or building, new sinks, floors, fixtures, the cost gets added to the rent. So say your rent is $1,000. When you move out, it automatically goes up 20%, $200. After that, if the landlord spends enough renovating, the apartment leaves rent regulation for good.
Now that's the way it's supposed to happen, and that's probably the way it happens in maybe 10, 20% of the cases. The other way it happens is that the apartment becomes vacant, the landlord doesn't spend the money, maybe paints the apartment, refinishes the floors or whatever, and just says, okay, this apartment is no longer rent regulated. And unless the tenant who moves into that apartment, which is now, supposedly deregulated, unless the tenant moves into that apartment, files a complaint, an overcharge complaint, nothing happens. The landlord gets away with it. And one of the issues here is, of course, that vacancy decontrol is a very strong incentive for landlords, bad landlords, to harass tenants out of their homes in one way or direct harassment, indirect harassment, subtle harassment, overt harassment, whatever.
The tenants at 152 West 14th Street were made homeless by harassment. As a single-room occupancy building, an SRO, it falls under a category of regulated housing that vacancy decontrol can't affect. However, the city loses affordable housing in other ways.
Well, we were vacated by the city because the landlord neglected the building for so long that the facade had to be torn off, and now we're all homeless and they're still refusing to fix it and put the facade back up.
The tenants vacated ended up relying on city services. For Claire, this meant entering the shelter system.
After the vacate, it was just hell on earth. From the moment they knocked on the door, the Red Cross and DOB, get out. I trembled, I couldn't speak.
Located in the vibrant meatpacking district of Lower Manhattan, where real estate prices up the ante, Victor and others have been without their home since March of 2009.
The fact that we were vacated, human beings, vacated, in a modern society, and not having nowhere to go but to a homeless shelter.
David lives at another SRO of Stanley Wasserman on 14th Street. Though not vacated, his building is in trouble too.
I'm here today because I'm protesting against the really poor service and maintenance that Mr. Wasserman does not give to the buildings where we live, and we're really concerned because we have cracks in our facade too, and we're concerned that our building is going to collapse.
A lawyer for Stanley Wasserman says vacated told him being checked by structural engineers.
It's a very short report, but it's actually quite good.
I believe his goal is to then, remake that building into luxury housing. And right now, we can't afford to lose any affordable units for any reason. But we're certainly not going to stand by and let somebody vacate affordable housing because he's
Luckily for David and tenants everywhere, politicians like City Council Speaker Christine Quinn support their cause. Homeless advocates like Mark Greenberg also throw their support behind affordable housing.
We'll be marching across down the street. We'll be passing the place where we've slept.
Mark helped found the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing. He organizes an overnight annual vigil to bring attention to homelessness. For 25 years now, during the budget process in May, they organize in the parks around City Hall.
William Sloane Coffin used to say that a budget is a moral document. It indicates what you value, what's more important, what's less important. But we would have worship service, an interfaith worship service. We'd talk about homelessness and poverty. We then started, staying in the park. We'd stay in the park one night.
So, welcome everyone. How many of you are staying for the night?
So, half of our work is to help folks who've been homeless to recover from the trauma. But the other half of our work is public policy advocacy. And the issue we're working on now is vacancy decontrol. The way that the Assembly views housing advocacy, one is housing production, second is preventing homelessness, the third is providing services, and the fourth is promoting income.
Out of the vacated SRO tenants, Victor escaped being driven into shelters. Vacated weeks before the others because his apartment wall was part of the crumbling facade. He found temporary housing in a neighboring Wasserman building. This afforded him some stability.
When they told us that we need to move and all our belongings need to be removed from our rooms within a certain time, we all helped each other moving stuff. There was people that went to what they call YMCA, but it's like a shelter home. It's more like a homeless shelter. As far as I know, people are still staying there. Manhattan is kind of one of those places that everybody dreams of living. I mean, it's a great opportunity living like a normal Manhattan person without having all that money. If I had to pay rent full price, I would have never been able to zone. Well, on September 14th, I'm going to have my fashion show. I've been preparing for this for about, I want to say 4 months. I've been starting to sew piece by piece. I invited a lot of people, so I'm also having hors d'oeuvres and drinks, things like that, just to accommodate people. What's costing me a little bit, I mean, for what I make and for my budget, it's all my money. Yes, if it wasn't because of this place, living here, I probably would have not been able to do my show because I wouldn't have the money to do that.
As for David, he ended up joining the larger housing movement to repeal vacancy decontrol. Now he helps organize to save affordable housing.
Hello, Barbara. My name is David. I'm a tenant in an SRO building, and I am calling from the SRO Law Project because we're organizing a press conference and rally next Monday,